Yeah, well, actually, just since we moved to Georgia here, we got to catch the tail end of oyster season. We live near a shoal, and I had never seen a shoal before. I don't even know what that. Apparently, it's a thing here. But they grow all along the shoals, and there's just an abundance of oyster mushrooms growing out of the hardwood there, and all over the ground. And we got like 10 pounds of mushroom. We were able to share it with like uh, John, the farmer I work and live with, and then also like my partner's family, and cook it for breakfast. And it was just like the 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 protein value, or just the nutrition value of those mushrooms was just like mind-boggling. Self sufficiency, like doing something, and the reward of like being able to accomplish something on your own. Well, of course, with nature being like the catalyst and the mother of it all, but working hand in hand with like that force rather than like relying on some kind of like import export thing.
Mother Nature. She does a lot, beyond looking absolutely gorgeous. Natural ecosystems serve a very important role in human civilization. They provide essential services in primary production, including, but not limited to, fertile soil formation, creation of organic material through carbon sequestration, filtration to provide us with clean water and air, pollination, flood control, climate regulation, disease mitigation, plus cultural and spiritual fulfillment. Food comes from nature. Agriculture could not exist without biodiversity and ecosystem services. Yet, modern food systems are driving what scientists call the sixth extinction of life on Earth. Land clearing destroys wild plant and animal habitat. Water extraction deprives them of adequate clean water. Pesticides threaten the survival of essential pollinators, while synthetic fertilizers have created over 400 aquatic dead zones.
Today, agriculture is going far beyond nature to produce new miracles.
Food production, processing, and transport is responsible for 25% of humanity's total fossil fuel use. Agriculture as a concept exists in a false state of alienation from nature. To understand this, look at the way modern cities are planned. The conventional urban boundary is drawn with consideration for only minimal habitation beyond. Inadvertent assumptions regarding how food is produced allots land for large-scale farming by default. At the same time, new urban-related demands for land often result in the irreversible alteration of productive agricultural land. The production and processing of food is both separate from urbanities and nature. Just about everything is based on transactions. The biological transactions of heat and chemicals, the economic transactions of goods and services. Agrarian urban theory takes into consideration the biological and economic transactions of nature and agriculture. The first section along the rural to urban transect, the natural zone, or T1, consists of lands approximating or reverting to a wilderness condition. Natural areas are high in ecological diversity, which makes them highly productive sources of food and materials when managed correctly.
First and foremost, it's prefaced by everything that I've learned is from indigenous ways of like hunting and gathering and acquiring food. Primarily, I was able to learn from the Deshini family in Arizona, and the first part was learning how to forage for natural dye plants like mountain mahogany, yellow dock, sagebrush, ground lichen. Again, these are all like common names. So
Managed woodland provides forageable nuts, berries, mushrooms, and herbs.
but if you know where to look, it's pretty abundant. Prickly pear fruits, prickly pear pads, mesquite beans, if you want to ground them for flour. We would forage for ocotillo and yarrow. There's a very large variety of different medicinal herbs that we usually forage for and then make tinctures out of, stuff like that.
Understanding what nature requires in order to remain productive is an essential part of planning resilient systems.
But I think the biggest part of foraging is having available land mass where things can grow and sprawl in like a wild and unmaintained fashion, and then have people like, because when I was raised in school, they weren't like, oh, you can just walk out, in the backyard and there's a bunch of herbs and medicinal things. If you cut yourself, you can put aloe on it or do all these things to treat. And also, you always look to like you got to go to the CVS or Walgreens. You got to get the thing that you need for that, and when it's all already like available. So I think as it being like a accessible thing is making it accessible, but also like education. Educating people properly.
T1 zones can provide locals with a source of ethical and sustainable meat.
Okay. In the South, it's a common practice to like hunt the wild boar here, which are considered this. They're like an amazing quality of meat. We actually ate some today. It's such like a very rich source of food, and also a food that was brought here by like the Spanish in the past that is now considered like this invasive species, which I find a very funny and interesting thing. But it's a delicious source of meat.
T1 zones include lands unsuitable for settlement due to hydrology, topography, or vegetation. When viewed through the lens of agrarian urbanism, the preservation of forested hill slopes serves not only the needs of the natural environment, but also those of the surrounding community. However, in order for communities to fully benefit from wild food sources, education is essential.
Well, one thing that we definitely learned from the indigenous ways is when you are foraging, say you come across like a lush patch of sagebrush, you only take a few sprigs from each plant, and if there's only one plant, you might take a few sprigs, but we always joke about like humans being like seed distribution mechanisms at our core. So if you can assist that plant in spreading its seed around, or if it's an indigenous plant, if it's an invasive plant, doing your best. I mean, that's kind of a gray area. Sometimes improper foraging can lead to just like devastation in an area of like a certain maybe fragile plant or mushroom or even animal. If you over forage, or if you don't forage properly, the ginseng in the South, I know, has this like ginseng hunters, and it's this extremely valuable thing that takes an incredibly long amount of time to grow, and is just like foraged very unhealthily. You have to like learn and be educated in order to like understand the fundamentals, and if you don't understand those fundamentals, you can like do some like serious wrongs, or like you can do damage, and you can hurt people, and you can hurt very fragile ecosystems. My name's Gavin Fabry. I just moved from Arizona to Georgia, Tignal, Georgia, to grow food in a more sustainable and economical way.